All right, well, I think we'll go ahead and get going. Thank you again, everyone, for coming. My name, again, is Chad Johnson. I'm the studio director here at San Francisco Center for the Book, and we are excited to be hosting one of our instructors and good friends, Meri Brin, today here in our Shelter in Studio series. So I'll keep letting people in as we go here, but Meri Brin was born in Chicago, Illinois, and moved to the Bay Area in 1994. After receiving a BFA in 2006, she started teaching various printmaking classes, including silkscreen at Mission Graphica, risography at the San Francisco Center for the Book, and as a faculty at Academy of Art University. Her prints are built up from hand drawings, photographs, and designs overlaid in an exploratory process where the direction of the final image is not fully planned. Prints are often developed from combinations of printmaking techniques and have lately evolved into layers for final collaged pieces. She exhibits nationally, and her prints are in private collections as well as the Library of Congress. She has contributed artwork to Good Mail Daily, Quarry Press, and Stoner Coffee Table Book from Chronicle Books. Besides teaching and making art, Meri also creates zines focused on cats and food under the imprint Fixated Press. So with that, I will turn things over to Meri. Let me switch the camera. Take it away.
Hi, everybody. Thank you, Chad. Sorry about that. A little technical difficulty there. Welcome, everyone, to my studio. It is in a garage in West Oakland, so welcome. It's about half of a garage space, a single car garage. I moved into this house in 2010, and a lot of the built-ins up here and behind me were actually already in the garage. But it wasn't until 2020 when this beautiful 24 by 36 Takach press came into my life. I bought it used from a painter who was no longer making printmaking. So I was able to get it in January of 2020. And then, of course, we all know what happened in March when in-person classes, shifted to everyone's bedrooms. So, at that point, I was working out of my office, my bedroom as well. And I started to really put together this space in summer of 2020. So I felt really lucky this whole time to have an etching press and be able to keep working on my relief prints and just explore out of my garage. I teach a lot of printmaking classes, and my students don't necessarily have a press, but I love being able to show them both hand printing and also what you can do with it as well. So it's having a space where I live is pretty new to me. Previously, I always printed at the spaces where I was teaching. But as some of you know, when you teach all day, you want to go home. You don't necessarily want to stay and do your own work. Or if I would stay and do my own work, I would have people around or students around who, expected me to help them also. So it's been a really nice change. Looking at my space behind me as well, I do silkscreen out of here. And one thing I do is I just use a board that has my clamps attached to it. And I put that board down on my tabletop and print that way. I do have a bathroom on the other side of this wall. And if I do emulsion, I use my bathroom to expose my screens. I have been playing around with, drawing fluid lately because that's something that I'm teaching. So it makes it a little bit easier to put things onto a screen quicker as well. I'm working with a lot of linoleum, kind of various cuts of linoleum. So as much as I, hand print sometimes, definitely having a press makes that a lot easier. I also was fortunate enough that the tables behind me were already in this garage space, as well as the like the pin board on the wall. So I really just kind of uncovered it, as we are a household of artists who have a lot of stuff and equipment all the time, and just really utilized a lot of what was already here, to create, hanging areas for brayers, put some shelves up. I did cover all my tabletops with either plexiglass that I already had or cutting mats, because I feel like you want to have a surface ready to go. I don't want to have to dig around looking for a cutting mat, or move plexi around. So, my philosophy is cover your tables so that you're ready to go with, anything at any time. Um, I am using like as much storage as I can in a small space. So I think in a studio and shared studio, I would berate students for hiding their linoleum under the press. But here, because it's just me, I fully embrace, under press storage. Um, the press also came on the table, which has been really great for storing everything underneath. It is too tall for me, so I'm actually standing on risers right now, in order to be at a good height for the press. The other thing I've been doing, because I don't have a flat file at all or in this space, is really embracing magnets. This is just holding up my Thai Kozo, and then it's magnetized, to the side of the table. So I definitely have, some wish list items for the space, like a flat file, or even, some other equipment down the line. But we'll see how that evolves. I'm gonna, Chad. Let's switch to the laptop,
Okay.
and we'll move in a little bit. There we go. So just a closer look at kind of the inky side. So this area is a big L shape. I do have all my brayers hung up. And actually, one question for all my artist friends, like, I don't love, the little hanger because it gets in the way, but I also don't want my brayers just hanging out in a box. So definitely suggestions on that would be great. But otherwise, I love being able to see my supplies and know what I've got going on. I am doing all water based since that is what I teach, and I also feel like I don't want to deal with oil based cleanup, oil based rags as much either. So I've really full heartedly tried to embrace, water based inks, even though, as we all know, they're not quite as great. Um, and then switching over to this side, this is the silkscreen board that I mentioned. And when I'm not using it, I just kind of put it up against the wall so I can still have my tabletop area. Um, and I mentioned I do have a bathroom on the other side. So for screen cleaning, I use that area as well. I've been working on some relief prints, and then thinking about ways to kind of repeat patterns is something that I've always worked on. And I mentioned, in my bio that I've been working on collaging a lot at this point. I think as printmakers, we struggle with teaching our audience, about, what a print is. But at the same time, we also have tons of prints, right? We have the edition, we have the artist proofs, we have all those rejects. So I've really been collaging a lot of my layers, and especially working on thin papers, I like to collage the elements and then sometimes go back in, with inks or, some other materials. In the past, I've been lucky to also print Risograph at a couple different spaces. So I do like to make zines, and some artist books. So I've been working on those, although I don't have as much access to Risograph at this point. Um, I do make some single structure zines from Risograph. This was a collaboration with, Megan Addy from Aviary Press, and it was actually about, a cat of mine who did some unfortunate accidents in various places around the house. Yeah, so she's pooping in a bin. So that was really fun to be able to print. Um, I also do iterations sometimes. Like I'll work on an idea. This was cats in my house with risograph images. And then I developed it further and wanted to start with a little information about the cats, but then continue the same images in different colors inside. And this is a really great simple structure that I like to show my students. I sometimes teach a zine class, so showing them that you can have a poster, you know, in the middle of a single page book is really fun as well. I'm also a lifelong collector. I'm not going to say hoarder. I'm definitely going to say a collector, especially paper and ephemera and kind of really chronicling life in general, I think. So, a project that I worked on a little while ago was a book to hold all my movie theater ticket stubs. So, this is obviously pre pandemic. And I use those library, what are these, like the library cards that your card would be in the front of the library book. And then I do have a really nice Smith Corona typewriter where I wanted to add, you know, the title of each movie. So it's a nice chronicle of probably a decade or a little over a decade of movie theater going. So, you know, I did leave some empty spots in the front. We'll see if we can ever fill those back up again. And then I've also had the fun of being able to teach some study abroad programs in Florence, Italy. I'm a big fan of food, of ice cream, of gelato. So I also made this artist book about cone or cup. You know, which way do you want your gelato? So this is accordion with some extra little pamphlet sections. There we go. Right. Talks about a little bit of history of American ice cream versus gelato. And I did make some stamps, right, for the interior of the book. So this is not an editioned book, just a single one. But then I wanted to take some of this idea and I actually made a guide, little travel guide to Florence, Italy. This talks about gelato and other foods with hand-drawn illustrations. So this is a zine that I did edition, and then I wanted to utilize those stamps. So this one has the cone on it, and then there's a second version that you can choose cup if you're a cone or a cup person.
I'm going to jump in with one quick question, which I know because I helped you with it. But people are wondering what risograph prints are. I think maybe that's a print process that not everybody's familiar with. So why don't you just...
Absolutely. So risograph, risographers, we like to say it's if a Xerox machine and silk screening had a baby. So a risograph looks like a Xerox, but you put a single drum of ink in it at a time. So you also make a master. So for every color or every layer that you want to make, the machine is essentially making a master with lots of tiny holes, right? That master wraps around the drum, and then the ink is pushed through the open holes in the master. So you have that initial setup like silkscreen, right? Like your image being burned onto the screen. And then with risograph, like a Xerox, you can print a lot of that layer or that color really fast. So, you know, a lot of churches and schools used to use them to run off flyers. Artists have really taken them over in the last 10 to 15 years, and they create zines and artist books and posters. This print up at the top with the pink and orange is actually a risograph print. I did it for a local San Francisco band called Vice Rain. So there's a band version with text on the top, but I also kept a lot of the versions without the text on it. So risograph is really characterized by like a softness, some semi-transparent inks. The hot pink that the center for the book has is always, I think, the #1 color that everyone wants to print. So I'm hoping, we can get back in the studio and I can get back to the Risograph class that I do teach at Center for the Book. To me, it's a hands-on kind of thing. Being able to show it, being able to let people play with it. So it's something that's hard to do over Zoom. Any other questions, Chad?
Well, we can jump into a few questions here while we're going.
Yeah.
Whoop.
Go ahead and
Can
chat.
I have a little coffee? Yeah, go ahead.
Maybe you could text me the questions in the chat. That would be helpful.
Yeah, chat for Chad, please, and keep your mic off, right?
Yeah, we're trying to do that. So one question was what kind of binding is the movie tickets book?
Ooh, great question. And you know what? I don't actually remember the name of this. Maybe you all can tell me. It's one I know I picked up. Oh, buttonhole, right? Buttonhole stitch, because it's got the little horizontal stitches, right? And then it is just single signatures. I have a ton of this heavyweight black paper, kind of a cardstock that I found somewhere. So the nice thing is that I can have single pages. I can add them in. If I hate them, I can find that thread and cut them out as well. So the idea was that I could continue to add to it. Although I do regret not adding a tie in there to be able to tie it closed. And I did use some really beautiful hand marbled paper that I picked up in Italy as well. So I believe it's a buttonhole stitch, but some of you might know better than I do.
Yeah, I can see what you did. I'm not sure if I know the name of it, but that sounds right. Also on that book, someone wanted to know, did you find those library card holders or did you make them?
I actually found them on Etsy. There's a few people who've got, old library card holders, the cards themselves unused. For a while, I was definitely collecting a lot of that kind of ephemera. And at this point, I definitely have more of that kind of stuff than I'm able to use up. So I'm trying to think of ways to continue using a lot of that stuff. I love places like Scrap or Creative Reuse, and I tend to buy more than I can really use. So.
Someone was asking your workarounds for the flat files, and you showed those clips. When you showed those clips, what you referred to the paper there? What kind of paper was that?
Yeah, that's just Tycozo. I'm either using Tycozo, which you can usually get at Dick Blick, or like a mulberry paper. This is the Tycozo. It's pretty thin, right? We use it for printing on relief a lot. And you can flip it over, still see your image. I love it for collaging because, I like to play with layers. So I want to be able to rip things, but still see a layer that's underneath. So any of the thin Japanese papers, that are made for relief work really well for that. I also have a lot of etching papers like BFK, and I try to find other ways to hide those in here and just kind of stack them sideways. So I don't hang those as much since they're a little bit heavier. I also have another space upstairs. I call it like my clean space. It's more of a traditional office, but I also try to keep a lot of paper in, archival boxes up there as well. So not everything is down here. And like any garage, there's not a ton of light. Spending a whole 8 hours in here, there's times when I want to get out of here as well and go sit in the sunlight or go into a room that has a lot more windows.
And on that paper storage, do you make folders, like corrugated folders to stand things up vertically, or?
Yeah, you know what? I've got an old like 2 pieces of heavy board that have been folded. A lot of times an art supply store will give you one of those when you buy a bunch of paper. It's got a little handle on it. I can actually show you all. Hopefully it's not, yeah. So it's any art supply will give you one of these. So this is a couple pounds worth of BFK paper for when I am printing etchings, dry points, even reliefs. But I tend to prefer a thinner paper for reliefs.
Yeah, and at the center, with all our Roadworks prints, storing those, I don't have flat files big enough to store those giant prints, so I get pieces of foam core. So you can make those same kind of folders that Dick Blick one, but you can make them out of like a rigid foam core and just tape one edge, and then you've got a giant folder, and then you can stand stuff up. And so that's a great way to stand those up.
I also have, there's an IKEA bed that has 4 drawers, 2 on each side, and they actually fit like close to 24 by 36. So the drawers on my side of the bed are actually completely stuffed with artwork of mine, artwork that I've traded for. I definitely use those because they're like almost the perfect size for a full sheet as well.
Nice.
And my press is also 24 by 36, which was one of the big reasons why I wanted it, so that I could print full sheets of paper, because there's nothing like being able to print really big. Definitely.
Crystal asks, did you make the gelato stamps yourself? And if so, how?
Absolutely, Crystal. And this is super fun, super easy, right? It's linoleum that's not mounted. There's a couple versions, like Easy Cut, the pink one is one of the versions. And any of the art supply stores have these, as well as the cutters, right? So I just came up with my design, carved away, and just use an actual stamp ink pad to ink them up. This one I happen to have, it's actually like a little cedar block, and it was the perfect size to glue this on to mount it. So then, you stamp it on a piece of paper, cut it to the same size, and I can tell the orientation better with this one. And then with the cone, it's pretty easy to see which direction it should go. I have in the past glued like a little knob on the back just to make it easier to handle. So those are super fun. I used, for this book, I actually used the stamps that I just showed you, and then little rubber stamps for letters. And then the rest of it is all typewriter inside, typewriter and stamps. So I tried to not use any handwriting. It's nice to give yourself sort of parameters for a project, right? So this one, I really wanted to use my typewriter and rubber stamps, and those were the main parameters for it. And then this is also a little bit sewn, but just really like a Leporello style accordion structure.
Peter suggests that you might use spring clips to grab your brayer handles, which is a good idea. You can also drill out those handles, but then you gotta do it carefully and make sure you don't go off to the side.
Yeah, I did drill in to put the hook, although a lot of times when I'm working, I just don't love that the hook kind of bangs into things or bangs into my hand. But I do really like being able to see everything. I think that that's a hard thing in a small space, is it's easy to just like try to hide everything away, and then you forget what you have. Sometimes I rebuy stuff, which is really bad. But also just having everything out, I think, is really inspirational, and gets you kind of flowing to create more things. So I think that that's pretty important. So it's definitely a balance.
Yeah, for sure. Hans was curious how you attached the rubber stamp to the wood block.
Just some good glue, like maybe like what is it called, E6000, something like that, like heavier than PVA or Elmer's, right? Like a little bit more of a heavy duty glue, but pretty easy. I think if you're someone who has a ton of like random wood blocks around, it's something that's super easy to do, and it gives you a little bit more of a grip on your block, right? Rather than just having kind of the naked rubber. I've also seen people use what is it, like a spool of thread, the wooden spool, right? When the thread's gone, save those. You could also use cork, or for smaller ones, if you cut the pin off of a push pin. Anything like that is really good for the back.
Great. Betty wants to know a little bit about, do you show your work, like what the business side of your work is? Do you show in galleries? Do you do specific print jobs?
Yeah, I do show in galleries, mostly group shows. I'm definitely not as active as a lot of my peers are. One thing with prints is I'd say 95% of the time you have to frame it to be in shows. And it's something that becomes pretty cost prohibitive unless you make work that's all the same size and you can just switch out your framing all the time. That's one of the reasons why I've really switched to these collages on panels, because I do think that people going to galleries can understand work on panels a little bit better, and they're just simply wired on the back, meaning I don't have to spend an additional $100 on framing pieces, prints. So there is that. What else? I have done open studios, especially in San Francisco. I prefer to do it with a larger group rather than just doing it as a single person, because I want to, bring more people in. So open studios. I think just a community is really great. I belong to the California Society of Printmakers, so I try to be involved in that group and do their annual shows and additional shows, stuff like that. I do some work for hire. Like I mentioned, the Risograph poster was actually for a local band. And that was actually a friend of mine who wanted me to make something for them. I'm not that big on commission work, because I don't want to have someone, telling me exactly what color to use or to move an item over 3 centimeters, stuff like that. But if someone likes something that I've done, and wants to commission something similar, I'm always up for that. The primary thing, I'm definitely an educator, an art teacher. That tends to be maybe the bigger part of my art practice. And then, I make art for myself. If an audience loves it, I think that that's great. But I'm not necessarily making it to become something in the art world, I would say. Art to me is definitely my expression. And I also love the community that surrounds the printmaking and the Risograph scenes. And I really appreciate that and enjoy that.
All right. Well, I think that is all the time we have for today. So thank you to Meri. Thank you so much for the great tour. It was really wonderful to see everything and see your space. One last question, then I'll say, someone wants to know where we can get your zines. Do you want to just let people know your website, or?
Absolutely. You can look at meribrin.com. I also have an Etsy. If you search my name, MERIBRIN, on Etsy, you'll come up with Fixated Press. You can also just go to my website, which is also my name, and I do have links to my Etsy is where you can get my zines. Also, shout out, I've got zines at Quimby's Books in Chicago that also does, you can order things through their website and they'll ship them to your house.
Excellent.
Thank you.
Well, thank you, Meri, and thank you again for everyone for coming today. We hope you've enjoyed this tour, and we hope you can join us again next week. We will be traveling virtually to Sacramento to visit with Nikki Thompson of Deconstructed Artichoke Press. So we hope to see you then, and we hope that you all have a great week. All right. Take care, everyone.